Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
It's now time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Sherri.
Oh, lots of water. I'm Sherri, very grateful recovering alcoholic and addicts. Woo! Friday night at the rodeo. Wherever John becomes secretary, God bless him, he invites me to come and participate in my recovery, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you, Joe, for being the gracious step-in secretary host. Lovely. Congratulations to the birthdays and the messages, Mary and Lisa, that you shared. Really helps me focus and get in line. I too had a birthday not too long ago for my 24 years, and I consider that a victory of Alcoholics Anonymous and a miracle that I'm here. So where do we begin? I see old friends, a lot of old friends, and then we got all the new friends. All the new, reminds me when I haven't been here in a long time how old I'm getting. And this is young people, a lot of young peoples here. But I'm young at heart, and I'm from New York, in case you couldn't tell. But I've been living here for 10 years now, and so I'm getting a little of the groove, a little bit slow, but a little. Anyway, grew up on the East Coast, Bridge and Tunnel, New Jersey, New York, a great place to be growing up in a very dysfunctional, fabulous, fun, entertainment family. My mother was rich and my daddy was good looking. And it was on. And, I had an older brother, 5 years older, so I was like an only child because he was kind of advanced. He was out of the house and done, and he was a jock and played football and ate and drank, and, I didn't really see much alcoholism in my house. My father got drunk on Saturday nights, so he did drinking on Saturday nights. We had a small bar. My mother, diet pills. That was my mother, and so I could talk very fast and very high pitched because I had to keep up with her and know exactly when the school bus was and what corner it was going to be on. And I thought, my God, this woman can run so fast, and I'm so much younger than her, and I can't keep up with her. So the first drugs I really did find was in the kitchen cabinet with her white Dexies. Wow. And if you take one, she takes one, and I take 2 or 3. Well, I could be dancing as fast as I can. And that's how I went to dance class, taking that speed and pirouetting and doing cartwheels on the front lawn like a windmill. And, it was this glorious 70s, and smoking pot, and love the one you're with, and ban the bra, and you have birth control pills, and, everything was fun. And when you're young and invincible, it's all fun. And I quickly, when my first boyfriend was also a full-blown drug addict. I was still teetering around, but he was full-on shooting heroin, shooting speed. He liked to take everything apart and forget to put it back together. And I did that with him, and I quickly had a nervous breakdown. I got psychotic, hearing voices, having heart palpitations, ended up in my first psychiatric ward at the ripe age of 16. And right there, I was a full-blown drug addict. But in 1971, if you had a drug problem and you were in the psych ward, they just said, you know, you had an emotional problem. And I liked having an emotional problem because they give you drugs for emotional problems. And that's what they did. They give you Placidil and Thorazine and Valium. Those were the psychotropic drugs of the day. And really, they were boring. You do the shuffle, you can't remember, you got a cotton mouth. It's not fun. And, but I liked the psychiatric ward. And I really hated when they told me it was time to go because I had no responsibility there. But when I left, I did what I knew how to do. I smoked a joint. I went and had sex with my boyfriend. I got a tutor that the town paid for because I never returned to school. And my life was just messy addict life from there on in. It was such an incomplete. I felt like a loser from that time out. I was also sexually abused by my uncle at that time, so everything felt wrong. I felt less than, I felt like I couldn't really show up for life. And I faked it all the way to some wacky, weird, half-assed career, which was in the music business, which is a perfect place if you're dysfunctional and drug addicted. It is. It's a perfect home. They give you a paycheck, they give you drugs, and they love what you do. And, you know, that was great. So I put on my little bustier and my spandex mini skirt and my half head of hair cut sideways and out. You know, now we're in the 80s. Oh, Lord help us. And, you know, you couldn't have a bad haircut in the 80s. They were all bad. You could just take your scissor and go, look, fabulous, and they go chic. You know, your color was perfect. Half it was green and half purple and green, purple and pink, and, you know, it was fabulous. It was all expression, though, and so I found my cute little boyfriend. Of course, you always have to have a boyfriend. He's part of the addiction. All my boyfriends changed. They really do. I put it all, unfortunately, in the same pot because my drugs changed with the boy that I was going with. If he was into acid, I did acid. If he was into speed, I did speed. If he was into pot, I did pot. Drinking was just the way that was. I did drinking with drugs because I could not drink without drugs. I really couldn't handle drugs, drinking at all unless I had drugs. I could actually hold my booze that way. So, but I was naked all the time. I don't know about the rest of you, but when you get high, you have to take your clothes off. It was always, you know, too hot, too uncomfortable, you know, in my way, you know. So I was naked and stoned a lot. And so I met this cute little boy. You know, we were all cute and little then. And he was hot. He had just come back from a British tour, rockin' tour. He was a little punk with blue hair, wore his little motorcycle jacket, said New York and Brazil, hot, hot, hot. Had a big pouch. We loved that when boys wore tight pants. Hello, guys. Tight pants. We want tight pants with a pouch. And it's the version of a girl with a bustier. I want to see the pouch, okay? Is it rockin' or not popping at all? So he was wearing these great Anthony Price British jeans that you had that showed the pouch. And his hair matched his pants, very cool, like punk chic. And anyway, I thought, oh my God, he is so hot, he must be gay. They don't make him like that on my side of the fence. And he said, oh, it depends on the person. I like boys or girls. So I thought, great, I am so in. So, and he was also a child prodigy on piano, but instead of classical, he moved over to rock. So he was really a phenomenal musician. And it all worked right away. We came together, we made our little pop band in 2 seconds, you know, because everything was so fast, because that cocaine, that wasn't addictive. We just did like crazy, and everything moved very quick. And so our first band, our first gig, there was this rock star in the audience. He liked us. He had us open up for him in concert. We got a record contract. We got all this white powder that everybody had that was like free and out there and no secrets and wasn't addictive, and isn't this great? And what comes up goes down. Boy, did it come down. You know, we had this wonderful whirlwind of that 80s fluff success. You know, just could like cotton candy. Gee, it looks good, it tastes good. Oh, it evaporated. In that pink fluff, it was like it did. It just evaporated in one of those pink balloons I was sitting on in the middle of a pop song. It just went poof. Well, you're a pop star and now you're a homeless drug addict. How did that happen? But that's really how it happened, in a blink of an eye. And the older I get, the more picture of my life is, it really was in the blink of an eye. And so my boyfriend went back to the boys, which was predictable. I mean, you know, that took 10 minutes. And that's where he lived. He always says, I was the love of his life. And I always said, I was the only woman in your life. And that was true, but we love each other. We're still friends today. And I did, after the loss of a boyfriend and the loss of a dream career, and my family wasn't talking to me because I blew it, and my mother would be crying, going, I thought you were going to win a Grammy this year. I was like, fuck you. You know how much pain I'm in? So I did what I know how to do. I drugged. I put on my little party dresses and went to rock and roll bowling and all this crap, and I couldn't get rid of the pain, and I lied and lied and lied when people say, hey, how's it going? It's going great. Yeah, it's good. You got anything? You know, and that's basically how it was. And my disease progressed from smoking crack and doing what it took to living in an apartment with no electricity and copping dope across town on the Lower East Side and coming into my blackout den and cooking up dope and finding a vein under the candlelight. And being a Jewish girl, I would say the Shema while I was trying to find a vein. I know people say, you know, you pray to God when you're looking. Well, I did that, only I did it in Hebrew. How crazy was that? I guess it's like speaking in tongues. But it got worse. My mother actually came in, God bless her, for a little intervention. She came into my funky little apartment with no electricity and candles burning that I would steal. It smelled like a cathedral. I told her, I don't need electricity. I like the smell in here. And she begged. She saw my bed, my sheets were stained with blood and filth. And she said, well, let me just bring you to a detox. I was like, no, I don't have a problem. Of course I don't have a problem. I still had drugs. But when the drugs ran out and I threw my mother out of my home, well, not much of a home, a little dunky apartment, dying apartment, I made my way across town to Alphabet City. I abandoned my apartment. I always had a dog. His name was Spliff, after I lived in Jamaica. Everything was drug-oriented, even the name of the dog. And I dropped the dog off with some junkie friends of mine who were strippers. That's what junkies do, a lot of stripping. And making money for drugs. And I ended up homeless on the streets of New York with a Betsy Johnson shopping bag with my spandex clothes in case I got a gig. I weighed 92 pounds. I had tracks on my arms. I was a crazy bag lady because I was now smoking coke, shooting coke, doing dope to come down, smoking coke. But maybe somebody wants me to sing, you know. And I was standing on a dope line in front of an abandoned building, and some guy said, hey, I saw you at the Ritz. That was great. What are you doing here? I said, what are you doing here? We're doing the same thing here. What do you mean, what are we doing here? We're copping. What else do you do in front of an abandoned building? But it really hit me. And I had a boyfriend, of course, in those days, used to cop for me. He's dead today. He died 10 years ago, and I just found out about 3 months ago. And it really hurt. Because I loved my boyfriends. I loved my boyfriends. Just because he was my dope boyfriend. We were bonded through drugs. That was our sex. I loved my boyfriend. But he never got it. I loved my boyfriend when he beat me, and I ended up in an emergency room, and I got the first message when the nurse looked over me and I had a crack over my head, and she said, has he been putting you out there yet? pimping you yet? And I was like, no, he wouldn't do that. Like he's some great guy. He wouldn't do that as the blood is dripping from the hit. My boyfriend wouldn't do that. Denial, denial, denial. So I crawled into detox in 1983. My last using, and I always share this because an old timer told me to share this because they do that, and I took that suggestion. To remember where you were your last using, where you were, how you felt, what it smelled like, how it was. Because that is where your disease will take you back to if you choose to pick up, no matter how much time you have. You pick up where you left off, and it gets worse. It doesn't get better. I crawled into detox in 1983 when I could not get loaded anymore, when I was in a shooting gallery and my arm was out like that and the blood just hung in the drip and I couldn't feel the drugs and the pipe was stuck to my mouth and I was blowing coke and nothing was working, freebasing, and nothing was working. And I made my last 24 hours around with some guy, some stranger, shooting whatever I could and nothing was working. So when I crawled into detox in 1983, I went back to the psychiatric ward I was in 15 years earlier when I was just a teenager with emotional problems. And I was crazy and in detox and withdrawal first, of course, not detox. And I said, I want my room back. And she said, don't worry, we have a room for you. And then they gave me methadone, and I swigged it back, and I was yelling, it's not working, because we're used to instant gratification. She said, give it a minute, it'll work. And then it kicked in, and they brought me to a room, and it was not a private room. Don't you know who I am? Because I don't. I had changed my name so many times. I didn't know I had changed ethnicity. I was Puerto Rican, I was Italian. Wherever I could go to make it work, I was just fitting in wherever I could. But I was anything but Jewish because I knew they killed Jews. They'll put you in a closet, you'll end up in an attic. It's not good. Don't be Jewish. And it's very uncool. I mean, you could be geeky if you're Jewish. It's like a geek thing. So before Schindler's List, it was not cool. Schindler's List made it all okay. It made it hip to be Jewish. Everybody who was Jewish in hiding came out and claimed their Jewishness. People were converting. We got a lot of people came in. But anyway, I went to this place. I got my 21-day detox. Now, I'm an addict, got an addict brain. I'm insane. My 21-day detox is, I know I'm just going to get this stuff out of me so I can go back out there and use. I have no second step. That's an addict thinking. That makes plenty of sense to an addict. Now I can really get loaded again. But by that 21-day detox, one of us started coming around and making their visits. Yuck. The worst kind of one of us. That recovering counselor. The one with the tie on and a little jacket. Ugh, what an aversion to a punk-haired street drug addict. Ooh, what are you? Like from the outside world, like the moon. And he started talking about, where do you want to go from here? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, how about a halfway house? I said, halfway to where? And he explained to me, you know, it's a place that you live, it's a sober house, and you get a job. The world stopped at that word. I had no clue. What the fuck is I sing. That's my job. I sing, I pop out of cakes, I lose my clothes. That's what I do. I have no concept. I see Don, he's going, she needs a job. The girl needs a job. So I was freaked out by this. I would do anything to avoid that. My father said I was allergic to the word work. But I wasn't. I was just terrified because I had no skills. And I was humbled by this disease, and I had the gift of desperation. I truly did not want to go back to where I came from, but I had no idea where I was going. I had no idea how to even stay clean and sober a day. I didn't know about this yet. I go to a 6-week rehab on my coverage, medical coverage, and now all you had was a raging alcoholic without the benefits of drugs to keep that rage down. I was so pissed. I hated all those stupid alcoholics in their fancy cars with their fancy husbands. They have no idea what I'm talking about. I have to explain to them what copping is. I was just arrogant and angry and, sicker than all of you. I was so proud to be the sicker than most crowd. And then my counselor brought me in her office and she said, "We agree. We think you need more treatment." When everybody was getting released or having outpatient, they recommended 18 months in a long-term treatment program. That's terrifying. But the gift that God was looking down on me and doing what I could not do for myself, because I was taking actions even though I didn't know what I was doing. I did not want to repeat the same mistake and expect different results, and I didn't even know there was a second step yet. I was just walking forward. So I went to a state institution in Paterson, New Jersey, a cross between the Army and jail. 300 alcoholic addicts. 15 of them were women. 2 of them were white. 1 of them was Jewish. I marched in, and you had to go to the Catholic Church, the Protestant Church, or study with the Muslims. When I finally got a clue going, well, I'm Jewish, but I'm a singer. I'll sing in the choir. I'd like to sing in the choir. So I sang in the Catholic choir. For every funeral, the father was going like this, and I was going, God bless you, and I loved all of it, So everybody got to wear, you could only have one piece of jewelry. You had to wear a religious article. You could wear a religious article. That was it. So I wrote home and I said, I want a religious article. I want a piece of jewelry. So my brother sent me a mezuzah. It's just this little stick. I waited for weeks for this mezuzah. I finally went to the shop caller, and said, well, did anything arrive for me, this little jewelry? They said, oh, this thing came, this bar thing. Or, we returned it. We don't know what it is. So I said, next time, send me a star. Someone will know what the star is. And I share this because I was getting a sense of myself. I had no idea who I was. I was so many last names, so many ethnicities, and I started to grab hold of, who might I really be? And I got a visiting rabbi, and I started to study, and I still had no meetings, because in those days, if you were a drug addict, they said drug addicts don't belong in Alcoholics Anonymous, because you people will think that if you have a disease, you'll just keep using that as an excuse. And alcoholics said, well, you're a drug addict, you're sicker than us. So for a long time on the East Coast, there was really no place for a drug addict to go. They kind of accommodated us in Alcoholics Anonymous, but they weren't all that thrilled, and we couldn't really talk about it, but we hung in there. So that's how I did my 18 months. And then, of course, the guy. When the counselor says, no fraternizing in this place. I said, ooh, who would want anybody here? Ugh. She said, have you ever been without sex for any length of time? I said, well, no. She said, well, you'll be surprised how good they're going to start looking to you. Sure enough. That guy over there who just got out of jail and had to come here because he shot his father and because he was trying to rape his sister. I love him. He just needs more love and understanding. So of course I left with him. Of course I was free to go. I wasn't stipulated. He was. So, yes, that was a big word I learned. Stipulated by the courts. I didn't know what that. I learned a lot of things. 24/7, B&Es. What do I know? I'm a Jewish girl from the suburbs. I did not know those words. But now I knew them from being in the treatment center, please. So it was not Betty Ford. My mother used to come in fully dressed in a fur coat with all the doodads of a Jewish princess, and she'd say, honey, Elizabeth Taylor just went into treatment today. I said, I don't think she's in this kitchen, picking chicken and busting out 300 pots and pans 3 times a day. So very different. So I had sex with this boy. We left the place. We broke camp. It's a big drama when you do that. And then he got drunk, and got arrested right away and went back to his planet and was happy to go there. And I became an H&I kind of gal. I'm going to save him. You know, I made it a habit to always have someone sicker than me. That was my treatment plan. Then I felt good. I felt healthier. But I was making my sloppy way into my recovery. Now, my parents thought I was pretty well because I gained 20 pounds. And in a Jewish family, when you gain weight, you're healthy. I was fat. And I knew I needed to get a job because I couldn't stand living at my mother's house. I was now 32 years old and, you know, starting over in life. So I took a bus to New York. I called an old friend of mine who had a chain of stores now. I begged her to get me a job in her store. She said, but you're a singer, why don't you go sing? I said, I don't sing anymore. I don't sing. I don't have a voice, I don't sing, it's over. So I went to work in her store, and my life started. I got a little apartment, and one day I was walking down St. Mark's Place in New York City, and it was a program of attraction. Now, I didn't know that. What I saw was us and motorcycles and all those village idiots, those fabulous village idiots. They all look like the New York dolls down there. You guys probably don't even know who they are. And big platform shoes and crazy color hair. And I thought, wow, this must be a great club. And I walked in, and it was the HOW Club. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. A packed room of addicts. The secretary had a purple mohawk. I knew I was home. The guy who was sitting in the front said, Sherri, it's so good to see you. I was so embarrassed. He used to book clubs in New York. I thought, oh my God, everybody knew I needed this? Like, of course, we all know we each needed this. And my old friend who I saw there, we used to get high together in clubs. I was so excited to see her. I said, did you ever move upstate and marry that guy? She said, honey, I ended up in Bellevue. And I was so excited, like, same kind of thing happened to me, and blah, 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 blah. And that meeting of one addict helping another, that first meeting, that first connection. She said, get a sponsor. So I asked the woman who was secretary with the purple mohawk to be my sponsor because I wanted what she had. I liked her toughness. And she didn't use for 3 years, and if she doesn't use, then I cannot use. And she was in the middle of service. She not only secretary that meeting, she had H&I commitments, she was in service, and it was great. And she dragged me along. And all my little New York old friends, my old club girls, we were all wearing our terminal black clothes with ultra mini skirts and push-up bras and sitting in the front room flashing. And then if you gave us a look, we'd say, that guy better work a program. He's 13-stepping me. We'd be flashing on that Friday night meeting. We were just out of it, but we were staying clean and sober. I stayed out of relationships because I knew I was crazy sick. I knew I did not know how to deal with no. In early recovery, I had a couple of them, and when they broke up with me or they weren't interested, I went ballistic. I just can't handle the pain. I can't handle the rejection. I can't handle the pain. So it wasn't safe for me, anything that gets in my way of my recovery. Now I have a sponsor, and I've worked the first 3 steps. I have a foundation. I know I'm powerless over alcohol and drugs, and I know my life was unmanageable. That was pretty simple. And I know I had to get honest, the principle of the first step. And I was already changing things, getting hope in the second step. Things were changing. And then I got that third step. I wrote a letter to God, the God of my understanding. And I was kind of working towards that in rehab, even though I wasn't conscious of it. But all of a sudden, the spotlight was on that third step. Then I got to that 4th step, the dreaded 4th step. The one that everybody says, don't do that. You don't want to go out if you do that 4th step. Too much trouble if you do the 4th step. But my friend, now I had a recovering roommate. Because my first roommate was an old friend who was still coming home stoned and having one-night stands. Now I had a recovering roommate, and she was getting better, and I wasn't feeling better. And she had a sponsor, and she worked a 4-step, and I asked my sponsor, how do you work a 4-step? And she didn't know. She was great for the first 6 months of my recovery. She got me a foundation, she got me in service, she said, don't sit on the edge, sit in the middle, be in the middle of the program. But then I needed a sponsor to show me where I can go from here. And this woman came in from California, and she was like the rock star of this other fellowship. And people lined up on Bleecker Street just to hear her speak. And the smoking was in the rooms in those days. I thought that was spirituality. And we used to have a smoking section for the non-smokers. How crazy is that? And I asked her to be my sponsor, and every Wednesday at 2 o'clock we spoke, and it was all about the steps. It was not dilly-dally time. It was direct work and direct homework, and I respected her. She had 15 years, and she was very old. She was in her 50s. Very fucking old. And I'm so much older than that now. And so I did this work, and I met her in New Orleans for the World Convention of this other fellowship, and I did my 5th step. Then we threw it in the Mississippi, and she said, now, honey, you did the hard work. I want you to go have a good time at the rest of the convention. I want you to dance and enjoy yourself, and then in a couple of days, we move on to our 6th and 7th step. And my life started to change. Now, during this time, I moved up to Boston. I started going up, I went up there for a convention, and I met this guy. I was 9 months into my recovery. I met this guy who was shopping in the convention for recovery for a musician friend of his. And a friend of mine said, oh, my friend Sherri's up there. She used to be a big junkie, but she's doing good now. You should hook up with her. So he came there looking good, just the right guy for me. And our first date was essentially a 12-step call because I would have never gone. And I remember my breath was taken away as he posed in front of his black Chevy Blazer, which was so hot to me in 1986. And he had his sleeves rolled up in the black and tight black jeans and beetle boots. And oh, I just thought he was the best thing I ever did see. And we drove up to this rehab, and I 12-stepped his friend. And then he said to me, he's not a bad guy, is he? I said, no, he's a great guy. He's just a sick guy. And then he cried in my arms. And then he drove me around Cambridge, Massachusetts, where he lived. And then he brought me to his house. And he introduced me to his 15-year-old son that he raised on his own. Excuse me, you can just roll me over, toast me now. I'm so gonna marry this one when I get a year. Oh my God, the rewards for doing the right thing. So we did, he brought me back to New York. He didn't just put me on a plane and send me there. He got on the plane with me, brought me to my apartment, kissed me goodnight at the door, and went back to Boston. Hello, I'm so marrying you. What day is it? Okay. So we had a whirlwind romance. You know, fast like we do. Back and forth, back and forth. I'd be listening to Carly Simon, like all those romantic Martha's Vineyard songs, you know. It's me, I'm in love, I'm getting married. I have this big ring on my hand. I can't wait to share in a meeting. Friends told me I was the happiest girl. I was floating on air. These are the gifts of the program. This is what happens when you stay sober. La, 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 la. I'm getting married in a yacht in New York in the harbor. My boyfriend is a musician. He's going to be my husband. We have a son. I'm going to get pregnant right away. I was so japped out I couldn't stand myself. I don't know who I became at this stage of my recovery, but I became my mother's daughter, the daughter she always wanted, that I kept saying, maybe I should have listened to my mother and I wouldn't have been so fucked up. You know, you go to the other extreme. Oh my God. The only thing I kept was that purple mohawk. I held on to that like, this is it, this is me, I gotta hold on to something of me. So that that's how it was. We had this whirlwind romance. I'd come up to Cambridge, go back to New York meetings, and make friends with my new meetings in Boston. It was different, believe me, it was different, a college town, very different than where I was coming from. They were scared of me. They called me Sherri from New York with the purple hair. That's what my title. You know, you have titles. We had Leapin' Lenny, tried to kill himself, leaping off of buildings. You have, you have nicknames, Retread Ronnie, you have all these names. Well, I was Sherri from New York with the purple hair. And then there were announcements in these meetings and fundraisers for addicts who were getting sick with liver failures and diseases that were not supposed to be out of the gay community. And, it still wasn't about us, though. Still about the gay community thing. And then I went up to Boston visiting, as I did almost every few days, and I got a phone call from my friend's mother, my first roommate in my sober apartment. She was crying. She said, Lori, her daughter, my friend, was very sick. They took every conceivable test, and they couldn't find out what was wrong with her. Could I please visit? Oh, I'm sure she's going to be okay. I mean, come on. She's young, she's healthy, she's fabulous. You're just exaggerating. She'll be all right. Besides, I'm getting married. Did you know I'm getting married? She started to cry. I said, okay, I'll be there. And I made a trip to New York, skipping almost down that hallway, so excited with my life, until I hit that door and saw caution, body fluids, and a basket next to the door that had a gown and gloves and a mask to put on to protect yourself when you entered her isolated room. I walked into Lori's room, and there she was. So skinny, she was almost unrecognizable. Her eyes were rolling in the back of her head, and she was grabbing at the air because she was hallucinating due to a brain infection, wasting syndrome, the final stages of AIDS. Her mother sat in a chair in the corner of the room with dark sunglasses on. She peered over her glasses, and she said, "We know what she has, but we are not going to talk about it." I spent the day with Lori. I was so shocked and overwhelmed. I think I just stared at her. I could not believe my eyes. My beautiful young friend, not even 30 years old. A few days after that visit, she died. Her obituary said she died of a rare cancer and asked that funds be sent to a cancer foundation. But a few weeks later, my second phone call from another dear young friend happened to be a gay man. I saw the same thing, the same isolated unit, the same sign on the door. Oh my God, AIDS is not somebody else's problem. And I would go to meetings and sit there like this, and we all did, because it was hitting the rooms big time in New York in the 80s. And so I was perfectly healthy, and I'm over the moon happy, except this dark little cloud is following me, this little rain cloud. I thought, I'm just going to get a clean bill of health and go get tested. And I made a promise to my God of my understanding that no matter what, I won't pick up. I thought about it a long time. It wasn't an easy decision. And I went and I got a test in this nice suburb of Massachusetts. And I said, while you're at it, why don't you give me one of those AIDS tests? And he looked at me like I had 3 heads. He said, what do you want one of those for? I said, well, I used to live in New York. And then he said, don't worry about it. Nobody tests positive here. This is Massachusetts. And I thought, great, I'm making an excellent geographic, because everybody I know in New York is dying or sick. So I happily took my denial back, went back to my beautiful wedding plans, wedding dress, invitations in the mail. My nephew and my stepson are hanging out, they're tight. I have a family. On April 12th, 1987, my 33rd birthday, I was diagnosed HIV positive over the telephone. And it was a death sentence in 1987. And I hit my knees, which is what I do, and I prayed, and I called my sponsor. God had removed the desire, even the thought of using. What I knew how to do was right there for me. I hit my knees, I called my sponsor, and I said, now what do I do? And she said, you need to go to a meeting. You need to talk about it, and then you talk about the solution. Anything that happens to you, you go to a meeting, you call your sponsor, go to a meeting and talk about the problem, and then don't just dump in the middle of the room, talk about the solution. You know, I like to work through the steps. I can tell you that the 6th and 7th step of compassion for myself and healing and not reacting and not acting out and getting married and having a rough time of it with my husband and living through a divorce that I let him go so he could have the life that he signed up for. He wanted kids. He wanted other things. And that was one of the great gifts of recovery, that I could step back and say, you don't have to have this burden. It's mine. Thank you for standing there with me until I was strong enough to move out. When I had a fabulous stepson growing up, and he had a mother who abandoned him, and I was angry. I judged her. And then when he got to high school graduation, I invited her, and I thought, if she wasn't who she was, I wouldn't have had a son. And I needed a son. I needed a child, and I got the child I wanted and needed. All these years later, every lemon has turned into lemonade. And I'm not saying that it's been easy. It's been hard. There's a lot of resentments around HIV. It changed my life for a lot of things, my career, my health, my relationships, my finances. But I show up for it, and I do the best I can with God's help and your help. You know, today I worked over at UCLA. I get those gifts. I get to feel good about it. Doesn't make me rich, but I get to feel good about myself, that what I had to walk through has made me stronger and given me a gift to give away. And that's all the blueprint that I learned here. So no matter what, you don't pick up no matter what. Get a sponsor, work the steps, be of service, because it cannot be all about you. That's how I survived that news. I helped others who were in much worse circumstances than me, who had no homes, who had no husband, who had no money. I always had those things. I always had a place to live. I had health insurance, and I had a family, and I had you. I had a program and a fellowship. How grateful am I? Thank you for my life.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the The drone has been established, it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.